Welcome everyone to today's Ninja special event. It's the 3rd of July. So happy to see you all here. This is one of those events I was just saying that I'm so excited that I have to control myself today because we are launching a new service for our clients with the help of Audrey McGibbon from GLWS, and Audrey's the CEO of 𝗓𝗏. I'll be introducing Audrey shortly. Today is all about thriving in a stressful world. So it still is a very stressful world for many of us. So I think this is really on topic and we need this. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians and owners of the lands we are all coming from today. I'm coming to you from Gu-ring-gai land, the northern beaches of Sydney, and would like to acknowledge the traditional owners here, their stewardship, their care of water, land, culture, language for thousands of decades. Is that right? Yeah, thousands of decades, tens of thousands of years. So yes, and I welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders with us here today. And thank you for joining us. For those of you that don't know me or don't know anything about Think Productive, which may be a few of you, we are a global company, Think Productive. We are all about supporting people to reduce stress. Our vision, creating a work revolution where everyone loves Mondays. So very excited to help you love Mondays by talking about this new opportunity today to dig deep into our well-being and our opportunities to thrive. We're looking at how our work is having a negative impact on our well-being for many of us. You know, why assessing individual well-being should be the first step to supporting and improving our well-being. So starting at the individual level, we can then, meta that up to teams and organizations. But today we're learning all about GLWS. I'll let Audrey explain all this when we get there, and then I'll be talking about how Think Productive and GLWS can bring well-being improvements to you and your organization. So what we've got to offer today. But today's not just about what we've got to offer. There's some really good information coming from Audrey. Every time I hear Audrey present, I'm like, how do I write all this down? So get ready to take notes, even though this is being recorded. And as always, some fantastic giveaways at the end. So stay right till the end if you can. The giveaways are not recorded. Just to get us in the scene though, get us in the mindset. I'd love you to think about what was the last workplace well-being activity you took part in? And when was it? This will be really interesting to think about. For example, I'd love you to put this in the chat. Make sure it goes to everyone because this will be really interesting to see. Was it stress management training in August, for example? Or was it, we'll include productivity ninja workshops in this. Was it a productivity ninja workshop? Or was it yoga? Or was it book club? This is great examples. Thank you. Really, this is not a trick question. So yeah, really curious to see what comes up here. It also gives us all a lot of good ideas. I will take some of these ideas and share them in the follow-up email because this will give us some actions that some of us might make. So, beautiful. I think there's a good point there from Nicole. I miss most of them due to being busy or traveling for work. Yeah, that can happen. All right, thank you so much for that. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Audrey. I'm not going to read all the words on this slide. I am just looking at my biggest slide over here. Audrey has decades, over 30 years experience in this space of well-being, leadership, organizational development. Audrey's a chartered occupational psychologist, a coaching psychologist, the CEO of 𝗓𝗏, the author of the GLWS, which she will tell you all about. And I will leave that there just for a few more seconds for you to have a quick skim read of that. And Audrey, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. So I'm going to hand over to you now take us away. Please tell us all about GLWS.
Thanks very much, Matt. It's a real pleasure to be here and I'm grateful for the opportunity. So thank you. And hi, everyone. We've got 25 minutes together this morning. So let's see how far we can get. It's different every time, as Matt knows. So we'll just, we'll see what comes up. Now, I thought it was quite interesting, just even the title, thriving in today's stressful world. And it's kind of, is it possible? Is it an oxymoron? Is it a paradox? So that's where I'd like to start, is just doing a little bit of background on the state of the world today, and I won't make it depressing, because the answer to that question, is it possible to thrive in such a stressful world, is yes, but. So let me dive into that bit. So I'm going to try and share my slides now. A perfect illustration, because I was in a really happy, great state and things happen, and actually we can unravel quite quickly. Now, I wasn't really unraveling, but I was having a physiological stress response. So I certainly wasn't thriving, but it was a momentary dip. And when things happen, the challenge that we've all got to set ourselves is, how do you move back up the curve as fast as you can? Stuff happens, it's outside of our control, and it does affect us. It affects some of us more than others. And our job in life is to help ourselves recalibrate as fast as we can to our usual place of homeostasis or regulation. We're to try and regulate ourselves as fast as we can. And when we've mastered that, I think our job is to try and help other people regulate as fast as you can. Anyway, so that was a little aside. Well-being, and is it possible to thrive in a stressful world? It is, but this data here in front of you shows that you don't sit in a permanent place of thriving. It is possible to thrive, but at any one time, the rule of thumb used to be that about 1 in 5 would be thriving and 1 in 5 would be languishing. This is the employed workforce. And the middle would be hovering somewhere on the way up or the way down the curve. So this was kind of like a golden rule, just a principle that was very widely accepted. I've adapted this framework, but it's an academic, really well-established framework, and it's embedded in the principles of a lot of well-being work that's done. But what we know is happening is that this is kind of like a nonsense now. So this is getting a bit closer to the picture. We've kind of like wiped out the thriving numbers. So if you are currently in a place where you would say your general state is that you're thriving, as in leading your best life, feeling your best self, got your performance edge, you are one of a rare breed and a potentially dying breed, because that is not the norm. The norm, we've all sort of taken a shift to the left. As stress has gone up, we've taken a shift to the left. And those numbers are no longer the case. The more accurate picture is this one. So the vast majority of people, as I say, have taken a step to the left on this curve, and struggling is becoming the norm. Now, whether you are the executive manager, the professional, the knowledge worker who is experiencing these pressures, and or if you're experiencing those pressures and you have responsibility in your organization for trying to do stuff about this, then what I hope today is that you get some really good ideas about, or an understanding about why this is happening and what it is you can do at an individual level, and what can you do if your job is to try and support this for your organization. So the question that we ask when we look at this data, well, it shows us that there's been a 30% drop in the numbers of people reporting overall high work-related well-being. It's like, so what is going on here? So we use the GLWS, and I'm conscious most of you probably haven't heard of that. And I will say a little bit more about it later. But if you just accept at the moment, the GLWS is a thorough well-being assessment tool, and it measures professionals, knowledge workers, leaders, managers at all levels, their well-being related to work and their well-being outside of work. And we've been measuring this since 2016. And the rhetoric at the moment is, the world's in a really bad place and everything's crazy and it's a VUCA world and it's just too hard. But actually, if you look at that green line, yes, it did dip since we first started measuring it in 2016 along the bottom there. But it has kind of returned to where it was in 2016. And in fact, it's actually even peaking slightly above it. So I think we've got the post-COVID maturity and wisdom around, for those of us who are in work and functioning and have our health largely, we're doing okay, and we've got a lot to be grateful for. So it's got this little dip. But the red line is what's happened to professionals' well-being related to their work. So the fact that the majority of people's well-being overall has shifted to the left is not because of the world at large. It is because of the changing experiences of what's occurring in the workplace. And so our job is to try and understand specifically what it is that's causing this decline and what it is that can reverse that decline. So hold that thought, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But another little piece of background I'm just going to fly through is the notion of, when we're talking about well-being, what actually does this mean? And this is the results of a big meta-analytical academic paper that was released earlier this year. And it shows you that there are 155 measures of well-being. And in this instance, they actually narrowed it to measures of positive mental health. And so I'm not going to go through those terms, but suffice to say, they are all important. So when we think about how's your well-being, each one of those plays a part. Then, in a little piece of work that I'm doing as part of a long-suffering and as yet still some way off doctorate, that's just in my spare time, I reviewed a set of papers, 91 papers, that purport to be measuring well-being of leaders and managers in the workplace. And these are all the terms that come up when we broaden it from positive mental health to well-being. So the reason I'm showing you this is not so that I can do a crash course in psychology. It's so that you can understand that that question about, oh, how do we improve our well-being, or let's put our own oxygen masks on? Oh my goodness, it's got so much embodied within it that that we know has an impact, but trying to get it into something that's palatable and effective and engaging and useful without reducing it to, overly simplistic tick-a-box type things that are almost alienating people and backfiring some of those well-being activities that we looked at the start. You either don't have the time to go to them, or you're thinking, well, it's just going to frustrate me and make me grumpy. So that's the little bit about it's a reasonably messy area and lots going on. What it is that drives your well-being, and this is where this is the last kind of model-y bit, and then I'll get it much more practical. But in my world, I think, she says immodestly, that this is gold. So it's an adaptation of a combination of work around job demands, job resources theory, and the mentally healthy workplace models from the Australian government. So it's got really solid origins. And all I'm doing is just simplifying it and saying, if we want to understand how to thrive, we need to understand what it is that computes our well-being, what drives our well-being. And there are several buckets. And these buckets, the green bucket over there, or the green circle, they're all the things that are to do with our experiences in the workplace. And for those of you that are doing this sort of work, it's largely the psychosocial health factors, work design factors. They have a very significant impact on our well-being. Whereas the blue box, that's the box that most people think about when they think of well-being, because that's all of our, our deep, darkest, private, inner thoughts, our genes, we thank our parents and grandparents for what they've passed down over the generations as our foibles, our upbringing, our values, all of that's in the blue box. And so that's why when you think, or people feel their well-being is bad and they get carted off to EAP, or they get sent to the doctor or the psychiatrist or a counselor or a therapist. But oftentimes it's not about our own individual psychobiology alone. It's about how that interacts with all the stuff in the green circle and all the stuff in the orange box there, which is not our work, but it's to do with how our work sits in the scale of everything else that we've got going on in our lives, and that natural tension that's sitting there. And then, what else is going on for us that is additive or dilutive outside of work. So there's a lot of stuff, that's what I'm saying, that is impacting our well-being. And so when we get told to, it's well-intentioned when employers say, gosh, remember to put on, what's the phrase? Remember to put on your own oxygen masks first. That's what we say. And it's great advice, apart from the fact that when you stop to think about it, I think people are really confused. They're like, well, what does that mean? What is the oxygen mask that I'm being encouraged to use? And I think vaguely we know it's got notions of eating, sleeping, exercising, moving, not smoking, not drinking, not doing drugs. Yeah, we get that stuff, but how, in the grand scale of all the complexity that we've just looked at, are we supposed to be able to do that stuff when everything else has to carry on existing? And so there's a question that we have about, well, how much of this is the individual's responsibility to go find your oxygen mask and you use it and you plug it in and you know how it works and to hell and high water with everything else, but you just, you know, put your oxygen mask on. But what about your managers or your employers or your team's influence over that oxygen mask? Because they, if you remember that last slide, those things are, you know, very, very significant in terms of making it possible for you to look after yourself. And so that, in a nutshell, is what we set out to do, was to try and create an oxygen mask that would help individuals and organizations make it possible for people to move towards thriving, accepting that it is an impossibility to be permanently thriving across the whole of your lifespan. You know, in fact, if you were permanently happy and no negative moods, then actually you'd stop to appreciate it and you wouldn't realize it. So anyway, you move up and down, but we need a mechanism individually and organizationally to help people nudge in the right direction. And to do that, they've got to understand, well, which of those boxes and circles is it that's impacting them in a funny way or in a suboptimal way? And so I've got a really important slide coming up. And it is, it's conveying to you how we see this surprisingly complicated challenge of helping people thrive. In a nutshell, this one slide tells you our approach to doing that. So we treat well-being as a very delicate balancing act, not between work and life, that's too simplistic, but it's a balancing act between all of the resources that are available to us, whether that's resources because of the way that we're thinking and the way that we feel and the actions that we're taking that we can control on our insides, or the resources that are available to us in our environment at work and at home that we can tap into to get energized and protect us and sustain us. So we've got this whole set of resources. And of course, as you know, we've got a significant volume of demands. And some of those demands are self-imposed in our heads, nothing stressful unless we believe it's stressful. So some are internal perceptions and some are most definitely, you know, factual challenges that are there. But we have these demands and challenges coming at us, and stress gets a bad rap, but we need a volume of demand. Some stress is optimal, you know, in scientific terms, it's the optimal level of arousal. We tend not to talk about arousal too much in wellbeing sessions, but it's the optimal level of physiological arousal in order to feel motivated and energized. But in today's world, that overload is occurring that's kind of making the imbalance occur. So demands and resources, internal and external demands and resources, and that seesaw, and it's about trying to keep them in balance. So that's the philosophy, that's the approach that we're taking to treating well-being. And we did a massive big sort of mashup with psychologists, psychiatrists, HR, OD, lots of senior leaders and executives. And we've spent 10 years refining an assessment tool that people feel really taps into their experiences at work and outside of work in those key domains that the literature talks about, that we've just put it into more accessible language here. So there are 6 dimensions: the relationships, your social well-being, your meaning, purpose, and direction, which is, the literature talks about your spiritual well-being, but we don't address it as in any religiosity way. But it is around what's energizing and driving us and creating a sense of fulfillment. There's our psychological, emotional, social piece under the resilience and equanimity. So resilient on the outside and being able to adapt, and equanimity around, well, a lot of us are really masterful at showing to the outside world that we're adapting and changing and succeeding. But it's the unevenness that's occurring on the inside, and we're not feeling grounded with that. And then there's a whole bucket around vitality and energy and physical health. And the balance and boundaries piece is about fitting it all in. So is what's being asked of us tolerable and reasonable? Do the basic maths work? And I guess this is one of the things that, Matt, people come to you for lots and lots of help with, the productivity element of managing your energy and time and resources and attention. And there's a lot of skills involved in all of these. So one of the points I'd make here is that well-being isn't this kind of like, you know, purely psychological counseling, you know, narrative talk that's about reflection, the whole, sure, it's got lots of that. But if you want to optimize your well-being, if you look at those areas, there's a lot about skill in there, your skill of delegating, your skill of prioritizing, your skill of having difficult, meaningful conversations, your skill of pushing back and saying no, your skill of
Audrey, I'm
continuing
going
to
to have to give
learn
you
and develop.
I'm going to have to give you a 2-minute, a 1 or 2 minute wind up, please, Audrey, so people can
That's good.
get out of here. Thank you.
This is the engine that drives the assessment tool. And behind it, there's 126 questions in a really lovely online survey. Lovely, she says, but we know, yes, it's a survey and there's survey fatigue, but we have 100% completion. The hardest bit is getting people to open the link. And when they open the link, they're hooked. And they say it's beneficial and valuable even before they've seen their results. But when they get their results, the results are produced in a way that is familiar to any professional and knowledge worker. It's crisp, it's dashboard based, it's a summary to begin with, and then for each one of those dimensions, you have a whole page that plays back to you what you've said about your experiences currently that are impacting your well-being. And so that's the power of the individual tool. And then at the team level or group level, we roll the data up, and that allows the learning and the insights to occur and feed back into L&D, culture, workplace health and safety, psychosocial health, risk management, leadership development, and skills training. So to finish with, I thought I'd share an image that made me smile. I plugged a description of the challenges and pressures and demands and resources and the expectations of contemporary knowledge workers and leaders into AI. And this was the image I got back that reflected what I told them about many people's existence of working today and why, in fact, work was going down the way. And so what the GLWS does is helps zone in on that stuff, and it helps you think about at the individual level, what are the pains and aims that you want to address, and at the organizational level, what does that picture suggest about what needs to get fixed at the organizational level. And yes, it's a well-being tool when we look at the health outcomes, but health outcomes, we don't just measure well-being for the sake of getting well-being up. That's a great outcome, but well-being is a driver of so many other performance outcomes. And so that's what we mean when we say put your oxygen mask on. We mean it's the individual and the organization's responsibilities to figure out what is it that the support that's needed by understanding specifically the issues that people are experiencing at this time. And I think I'll leave it on that point, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Wow, I just love hearing you talk about well-being. It is so detailed, and there's so much in that. So I need to be really quick here. So thank you very much, Audrey. I really appreciate that. I need to be quick here because I know some of you will need to leave. The really exciting thing here is now that the GLWS is available through us at Think Productive. So there's one option where you can do a one-on-one survey with a one-on-one debrief. The survey is beautiful. The report is even more beautiful than the survey. The report is stunning and the report is really helpful. So you can do a one-on-one, but even better, and what's recently been made available through GLWS is option 2, where we can do individual surveys, but with a group debrief. This reduces the cost per person because it's quite costly to do it one-on-one with a one-on-one debrief with me. So I am an accredited facilitator of the GLWS. So that's why we can offer this through Think Productive. I did that training with Audrey and her team last year. But option 2 is the beautiful option now because it's more affordable per person to 10 people. But they do an individual survey, but we do a group debrief. So get in touch. If you want some details on that, if that's of interest, please get in touch, send the email to the normal place or have a look on our website. I will put a link in the chat to the workshop on our website. Audrey, you don't know this. I've called the workshop that we'll be offering, or this group debrief, if you like, I've called it Thriving Together, because it's now thriving together, because it's individuals, but we're going to come together as a group. Now, I'm going to do the giveaway now. So if you need to leave, I'm sorry, we've run just over time. We've got some great news coming up. We've got another free Ninja Skill Booster coming up on stress management and mindfulness for ninjas. We've got a public workshop coming up on our Way of the Productivity Ninja public workshop, which is our beautiful, beautiful flagship workshop. Now I'm just going to pause the recording and provide the giveaway. So thank you so much for watching this recording. If you're watching us on YouTube, please get in touch if you'd like any information.